name, because the real meaning of the Rohingyas is actually the native of Rakhine. So Rakhine people, I'm not Rakhine people, but I know the Rakhine people's feeling. If they are the native of Rakhine, where we have to go? That's the feeling. That's why in Myanmar, even the name becomes political issues. So that's why we pay more attention on this name. And nowadays, this name, we like it or not, are widespread. In international media, also even in the United Nations, without acceptance of the host country. This is, maybe, I may be wrong. This is, I think, that beyond its mandate. I may be wrong, but I'm feeling like that. Okay, how about that created names? They can actually walk illegally because refugee cannot walk according to the conventions. But they work in those countries, industries, as very low-paid workers. They become two-timers. They get a lot of profits. And also profited by the human trafficking gangs. They carry those people from Bangladesh, Chittagonians, shows, and within our territory from Burma, like that. International media very heavily to accept at times without verification. Well, what happened that? I was showing a picture. These people from Chittagong and other parts of Bangladesh, they were seized by Myanmar Navy within our territorial water. At the time of the very notorious boat people episodes last a couple of years ago, when they are interrogated, it appears that they are Bangladeshi people trafficked by regional human trafficking gangs, so that we transfer those people to our Bangladeshi friends at the border. So this term Rohingya had been exploited by those human trafficking gangs, those who would like to have an easy license to get the refugee status. So the number of so-called Rohingyas are actually exaggerating in foreign nations. I think it's more than 5 million outside of these regions. They call themselves like Rohingya. How can it be when the topic of the roots of the conflicts and migrations? I can show you the statistics. Okay, if I conclude this topic, yes, the Rohingya, the term, maybe a dialect under the language family of Bengali Assamese. But as a political identity or ethnic group, they cannot be nationalities of Myanmar. It's very clear that. I don't say they are not eligible to the citizenship of Myanmar. According to 1982 law, we can accept who are in line with that law. We don't deny their citizenship. We don't claim they all are illegal migrants. But the international media wrongly depicted that, especially former President Thein Sein when he met with UNHCR chief during his time. He clearly stated that he will accept those people who are eligible to citizenship, but if those who are not eligible, we will arrange them according to the international practice and international law. But the thing is that this conversation is misinterpreted or mistakenly stated. So, according to the expressions of the media, the Burmese Myanmar people and Myanmar government assume as they are illegal migrants or the stateless person. This is not the case. This is not true. I'd like to explain here for that. Yeah, this is my explanations on the reports for India. Thank you.
As a moderator, may I mention a very important fact, because all three of us are researchers and scholars. So what we discussed today on the topic of the minority people or Rohingya or history is that of our own. These facts do not reflect the official opinion of the directorate of the minority media group or the Tamil or the Ministry of Defense. So on the topic of the name Rohingya, so as Ugo would have explained, as certain people of Myanmar, we didn't hear the word Rohingya until around 1978 or 79. Before that, it was a very strange word. But even the world have never heard of that word before. And so that word became very, very popular only after the 1990s. That's I've noticed. So, as the writer has mentioned, it is some truth in what he has said that the term Rohingya has been politically labeled or so that ethnic problem is politicized internationally. And now, Ms. Lear, shall we go to the next topic?
I just wanted to put one more word. It is often presented like Rakhine people totally reject and don't know this word. I would like to quote Siamo Bateng from Sittwe, who's a very well-known author in Rakhine State, who in one of his publications mentioned that after the Second World War, there was a variant called Ronja, that was used locally. And nobody ever said that that was controversial or did not exist. But the fact that there are different spellings that you see in the 1950s show that maybe, and I am grateful that it is a local scholar who mentioned Francis Buchanan Hamilton that I didn't put into the discussion. But the fact that the term pops up, and then in the 50s you have different spelling, shows that apparently it was never written. So maybe it's an old word, but it's all about this interpretation that it takes. And what I regret is that as I have been coming to the country for many years before 2012, that after 2012, it became like nuclear, like it's something so dangerous you don't want to touch. And actually, I have been talking with Rakhine people for many years about this issue that was very poorly known outside. I just wanted to put this outside in front of the audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So shall we go on to the next topic, in causes of the conflict? How was that?
The reality, real situations of the geopolitics, even in the IT age of the war. A famous book, Revenge of Geography. In read, still geography is still matters in politics. And also, because of our internal situations, all the frontier area we cannot manage effectively since the time of independence. There's a weak administrations in the frontier areas that worsen the situations. And also, the underlying factors is underdevelopment into the economic arena. And also, there are many impacts of the domestic and international politics in these issues. And finally, what's inflation in the world, terrorism and distribution. Those are complicated in these issues. This in my mind. So, that's one historical and colonial legacy. I've mentioned earlier in other days. During the colonial era, Burma became British India at the beginning, and then after 1930s, British Burma. So India and Burma, at the time, the same colony, the same country, no border, like Shenzhen area now in EU. You don't need passport or you don't need any documents. And the needs of the labor in Rakhine states, a very cheap labor from Bengal, both Hindu and Muslim, came into those areas as a seasonal workers. So there's a demographic pressure in those, especially in the northern Rakhine states. That make different civilization, different society clash. Maybe like the semi-Hadithan class of civilizations. And it has impact on socio-economic lives. This is, I think, that the initiating factors. So everybody, I think this room, maybe you know the 1942 massacre at the beginning of the Second World War. So that domestic and international politics, Second World War, British colonial rush would like to use local loyal people in Myanmar, local loyal people for British rush. The minority nationalities, the Korean, Christian Koreans, and also the Indian South Asian people as their loyal servants in the administrations and their whole staff. So they use those people to resist invading Japanese Imperial Army, the Fort 136. Covert operations. They gave them rifles and arms and ammunition to resist the Japanese. But in Buriram Mountain area, in Rakhine area, those South Indian peoples, rather than attack the Japanese army, they have targeted the local people, the Rakhine natives. Tens of thousands of Rakhine people were killed at the time in 1942. That's such the history of hatred and animosity to each other's societies. I don't blame to both societies. This is the cause. We cannot deny the fact. After that, the relations between native Rakhines and Bengali settlers are getting worsened after the Second World War. And after the independence, the newborn Burmese government facing very severe internal insurrections. The government dubbed Yangon government. But the thing is that only downtown Yangon, you couldn't go beyond 8 miles. Even When Yangon moved at the other side of the Yangon River under the Red Flag communists. All the victims occur in insane. So the government and the general could not take care of the kind of situations very well. That's weak administrations in frontier areas. In geopolitics, the theory of frontier areas. The scholars might know that. Frontier areas tend to or prone to conflicts because of that facts. And those instability and weak administrations is quite natural that underdevelopment overwhelm in those regions, creating vicious cycles. So this is the real situation, what happened in Rakhine states. I won't blame anyone. This is cause and effect that rules the universe. So we need to stop the causes of the problems. We need to know the realistic facts about that issues so that we can tackle the issues. You can see demographic challenge. The rapid influx of the migrations and also high population growth rate without any population control. You can see in this photo, the single family with 35 family members. So, even in the colonial time, the population growth rate in the Bengali settlers are tremendously rapid. I can show you this record made by Deputy Commissioner DC Yebai, Mr. R.B. Smart, and get this gift. So that there's a huge box, so I cannot show you in the PowerPoints. But I can show you some pages, I think very important. Thank you for your patience. And you can see the races, populations of the races. Mohammedan in 1872, only 58,000 in 1872. In 1911, 178,000. Within 40 years, three times increase of populations. What he said about that? That the Argentines are gradually being pushed out of Argent before the steady wave of Chilean immigration from the west is only too well known. And the Mohammedans who are in the Islamic to number 58,000 said by the year 1911 rises to 178,000. Many a men who come down for the working season only from Telegram and are included in the census return are not, properly speaking, inhabitants of the country.
Salut pote. Moi je fais la tag, personne vient m'emmerder. Ouais, j'avais compris. Et moi je suis. Mais. J'aurais pu dire quoi, y a pas de réseau.
Describe even the
Je t'ai
thinking
envoyé un message, mais.
of people very strong to carry
Oui, c'est génial.
recorded and also huge ones. You cannot see any Rohingya was in this facility.
Ah, c'est mieux ici. Je passe sur la compact flash.
So, even since 1911, those British colonial officials won
Mais par contre, j'ai l'impression que c'est mieux si on reste pas à 3.
native Rakhine people because
Ça
of
fait- ça
the
fait
population
moins.
pressure coming from the west. And now you can show in this slide. And of the involvement of the international powers and nasty actors. Still, in 2013, one of the Bangladeshi newspaper stated that about the Greater Bangladesh, comprising Bangladesh and Arkan and also Indian states of the Assam and Manipur, that New Year. After I read this news, I reported to my boss at the time, the president. We should be cautious about that news. There may be some movement like the Mohammedan movement at the time of our independence. I want that case since 2013. The government declarations forming the state level committees and agencies to deter the terrorist actions. But the thing is that this is actually very difficult task to protect 100%. The word ethnic cleansing. And this is also a very good example to see that this is not black and white. This is not just like the good against the bad. This is the two communities that were hit. Now, I remember a few years ago, during the presentation of Mr. Tony Blair in Bangkok, advising on peace in the society, he was sharing his example and his experience about Northern Ireland conflict. And he said, you are talking to two hostile parties and you try to find something that they share. And then he said, like, everybody had a problem with unemployment and
he said he started with talking on two sides about it. Now, I'm a historian, and I often wonder, is there something that the people there will share? So in 1942, they both share this terrible experience, but they've been telling each group their own story about how many people suffered. I have been very reluctant, I must say, to write anything about this because there are no primary sources. No CNN, no BBC, no Al Jazeera with a camera to follow up. Life went on, but the resentment, the despair about what had happened remained with the communities. And I've been talking to two sides about these affairs. Whatsoever, I think it's also a starting point to think back. The second point I would like to make with regard to what we just heard, looking back at history and the colonial period. I'm in particular thinking about the 1950s. Now today when people make comments about this and they refer to legal tax and the regulations and this should have been done and this had its rights and so on, I made the observation that the country came out of the Second World War in very difficult times. I don't need to tell you, with kind of a bad start. And it needed time to build up the bureaucracy. Ministry of Immigration, if you might remember, started in 1957, 1958. That means like 10 years after independence, the bureaucracy is still building up, the administrative infrastructure is still building up. So we might count, at least, not for an excuse, but at least to understand the weakness. And now it's easy later on to say this should have been done and to play the blame game. I just wanted to put these remarks also within what we are discussing today here and openly go into it. And let's also bear in mind that some of the topics that are hot iron today, like the citizenship issue, that wasn't really a big topic in the 1950s. Race and religion were not the hot topics that they are today. You might recall Udjamien, the great leader of Rakhine cause in the 1950s in the parliament, calling for the creation of Arab state. And he clearly said, we have no problems with the Muslims. I mean, he was a leader of Rakhine at that time and very famous. So we sometimes have to bear in mind that back even in those days, like 50, 60, 70 years ago, the way that the discussions were running back and forth were really different from what we see now. I think this is a little bit, you can call this a lesson of history, but also I would say a call for some modesty, somewhat for simplifying the arguments as we're running them today. Thank you.
Les applaudissements sont maigres. Je connais un gars qui a
Now we move to the next topic of the citizenship
c'est pour il dit pas des choses qu'il
The topic of migration is something for historians. It's a topic that every time I would like to call for 1 hour or 2 hours to explain the background. When you are looking back at history, not just of Rakhine, but you're looking back at the Bay of Bengal, you see that the history of this area is made up of people moving north and south, moving back and forth. You cannot explain Rakhine history in that area without taking into account that people have been migrating. And sometimes one needs to explain this again and again. This is a zone where South Asia is touching Southeast Asia, a cultural mix, also a friction and potentially confrontation. But migration is, in a sense, part of the history of that whole area. So don't let me get into details, but it is quite clear that at the moment that Pakistan, 1947, and Myanmar were born, out of the British colonial empire, this would all change, and those people, and we just heard Line mentioning this openness of this area during over 140 years, obviously was changed by the existence of an international border. I think this area, when talking about migration, both looking from the perspective of Pakistan, East Pakistan, Bangladesh, and looking from the Myanmar side, has not been a priority. I mean, within Myanmar, we know there were many, many things, many issues that the country was confronted with to maintain the union of the country. And this area wasn't always a priority. And that might also contribute to the fact that many of the issues have been like hanging on over the decades and not being dealt with as they should have been. Clearly, when we start to make now comparisons with other countries, and this is the point that sometimes I regret that in Myanmar, maybe the media, the newspapers, or other speakers trying to present the national Myanmar point of view, do not sufficiently insist on comparisons. Because there's much to be said about the situation in Myanmar. That's also true in other places in the world. Simply people would not be aware of. The issue of migration is really a global topic. This is not something that you can discuss only with regard to just one country and there's only one truth. It's a very complex issue. And these issues are discussed all over the world. And sometimes we may get some understanding, I think, for the situation here, if we can refer to problems and issues that appear in many other places in the world. Again, that's not an excuse. Sometimes people compare and one gets the feeling they want to get you away from your responsibility. I mean, that's not what we should do, but at least people should try to balance sometimes their appreciation. And I think that is what is meant by why we are having this talk show today, and to broaden the approach of these issues. And many of these issues are shared and should also be clearly expressed and put into a wider context. And I, as a foreigner, I am not in the place to make this criticism. I am not here, I am not supposed to name or to blame other countries, but it is up to voices in the country, in Myanmar, I think, to do this. Analysis and to do some comparisons, and also to get this kind of understanding. That's what I would say on the issue of migration. But obviously beyond that, when you're going to talk with Westerners, or Western foreigners, they're going to raise topics like social integration. You have people of great diversity. And I think there's much to be said about Myanmar history, where there is a successful example of tolerance, of living together, of being able to live together. But obviously, I mean, we open the newspapers and we also see many examples where this is a huge problem and where the country is trying to find its way to look towards a peaceful future. And in that way, sometimes and that's more personal, I'm disappointed that the situation in Rakhine State is always put up like exceptional with the rest of the country. There are many things, that I think that what we are talking about here is relevant for the whole country and should sometimes not be completely viewed as a totally separate issue. That is my personal opinion as an outsider. Thank you.
Thank you. May I add some words about the migration world? So if you look at the history of the world all around, you can see that people from the Indian subcontinent as the largest and the biggest mass migration to the Indian and Arab traders was to the East Indies Islands. Then the first there was the very large Buddhist country called the Sri Vizaya as a Buddhist country. And then the Hindu traders came to meet Hindus were all Dravidian descendants, and then all those Buddhists became Hindus. And then it spread north to Khmer in Cambodia, and then all the Cambodian states became Hindu from Buddhism. And after the Hindu came the Muslims, traders, and then all the Syria Vidya natives became Muslims, and the same happened to some parts of the Southeast Asia. So I would like the audience to take a note that the mass migration from the Indian subcontinent was never like any except the mass migration from Western Europe to the Americas during the 17th and 18th century.
Thank you. I would like to support my friends, Mr. Leader, that in comparison of the illegal migration into our countries, the same fate encountered in India as shown in the slides. The governor of Assam, one retired Lieutenant General Sinha, reported to Indian President in 1998 about the illegal migration in Assam. They said unregulated illegal migrations are actually beyond under control of the government. So that he reported to make a very strict measures on illegal migrations. Generally, people from Bangladesh, the crowded nation, 3 times larger than our country's populations, living in 1/3 of our country. They need living space. So this is geopolitical reality. So it's not so strange that there are illegal immigrations. So after that reports, I don't mention about the history or anything like that. After that reports, India take very stricter measures on the illegal migrations. People from the Bangladesh entering into India and the cattle smuggled into Bangladesh. That's a big business. But Indian side erected 2,000 miles long fencing along the border with Bangladesh, and our border guard force was organized with very modernized equipment and strength, and gave the order of shoot to kill. According to the media, 1,000 people illegally entering into the Indian territories were shot in 10 years. We don't have such a strict measures yet. We still not finished the fencing to deter the illegal migration back and forth. Still we are trying. That's why it's not so strange that we are facing such sort of problems of going back and forth. So another point I like to mention is that the mass migration back and forth are actually caused by the natural and man-made disaster. So, as I mentioned, rapid influx during the colonial era, and Second World War, 1942, the Bengal faced very serious cyclones, and 1943, Great Bengal famine. Few people knew about that. During the time of Second World War, the Bengal region faced a lot of hardship due to the disease, famines, and also 1942 communal riots. So the people, they don't want to live in those regions, went again to northern Rakhine after the Second World War, along with British forces led by Field Marshal Sir William Slane. There's another flux. And in 1971, both natural and man-made disaster occurred in Bangladesh. 1971 Chittagong cyclone killed more than 100,000 people, and also 1991 super cyclones. You can see that at the time always the problems of the illegal migrations and verifications and flee back to the other side of the borderline and international pressure, and we have to accept them again throughout this history study from our independence. The accusation of the mass killing and arson and gang rapes are not so strange. Even the independence era, and due to the military pressure on the Mujahideen movement, sort of the flight of the refugees from the northern Afghan areas to, at the time, East Pakistan. East Pakistan government at the time accused us of the same allegation now. Because the renegade group's leader, Qasem, formerly police corporal, he agrees to the newly established Pakistani government, and Pakistani government accused us at the time, the Prime Minister Ulu, not under the military rule, just under the democratic rule. And Pakistani government strongly protested in our government. They cannot sit idly for the accusations of mass killing, arson, gang rape, or like that. So, Ulu is very patient leader. He brought back former Pakistani ambassador of Peking, who also is a Muslim and a very good diplomat. He was assigned then as well, not Pakistan. He was the first ambassador to Pakistan. So he has many friends in Pakistani government, so that he sent, the Prime Minister sent him to Pakistan to explain and to realize the real situations. And because of the Uzbekians' efforts, Pakistani government then withdraw that protest. As far as I know, this is the fourth time we are accused by the one-sided media and also some international opinions. But the thing is that the reality is that our neighboring countries are prone to natural disaster, and sometimes both faces political instability, and that makes the people back and forth migrations. And because of the 1971 incidents, many people from Chittagong illegally enter into our territories. Not only because of the cyclones, but also at the time, Bangladeshi independence war. Chittagong area is very intense battles. So that many war refugees and also people flee from natural disaster entering into our territories. At the time, some elders, Rakhine elders, told that many Bengali people from Chittagong roaming around the city of Situate asking for job and food. That's reality. No official recorded or no official tally of those people. But the thing is that the huge amount of mass migration at the time That made Myanmar government do a fight to distinguish who are illegal migrants, who are legitimate settlers. And at the time, Myanmar transitions to USPP government, and with the new constitution of 1974. Before we go to socialist states, we need most specific data, and we take census in 1973. But the illegal migrants quite afraid of taken by the census, they fled again. So that Operation King, Dragon King, and also after that, the project HAMSA to accept those people. That's another international pressure. And the government said that we accepted more than the number of people who fled in the countries. Many newcomers who could not speak Rakhine dialects of Myanmar, we accepted. That's a very bitter experience from local narratives. Very few heard about that. But the thing is that always we are culprits, we are perpetrators, we affect them. And this is the true facts. You can find in internet about the 1971 cyclone, 1991 cyclones, what happened to them. So, after 1970s, when 1973 census form unregulated or beyond natural population growth in that Mayu district area. Some of the area, according to 1973 census, annual population growth rate is more than 8%. It's not so natural. It quite clearly shows that there might be illegal migration on us. That's why we make Operation Dragon King. And it led to 1982 citizenship law. But that law, 1982 citizenship law, is due to that incident alone. The considerations of them and the leaders at that time is beyond these areas. We have only 100 miles of land borders with Bangladesh. We have more than 1,000 miles of land border with China, the most populated country in the world, and also with second most populous country in the world, India. So, Myanmar nations cannot survive without strict immigration policy and law. But at the time, the leader, world-famous legal scholar Dr. Mama, was here to be in line with international laws and international standards as much as it can. But we need to cope with local situations. We need to consider about our national security for a long time. Every country has their own style of immigration policy and laws. Even in democracies, you can see that in Australia. I don't know military attaches from Australia here. They have very strict immigration policy. Illegal immigrants are put in islands outside of their territory, by law. And even they've arranged to hire Cambodia to put people from South Asian countries. Also, even in Western countries, European countries, now they are facing migration crisis. They also have to maintain, to contain those illegal migrants in camps. Even France, my colleagues, countries, are facing the same problems. So that's the migration and citizenship laws. It must be in line with our national interest. But I don't mean we can reject all the international norms and standards in international law. But Myanmar is a sovereign state. We can maintain our national interests if we cannot compromise. Our national security is the first priority, rather than other considerations on humanitarian grounds. That's my point. Thank you.
I'm supposed to be a moderator, but as a Myanmar national, I have just one new question for all the audience and all the TV viewers of the world. Just one question. There are over 160 nations in the world. Is there any country, any nation, including the United States, United Kingdom, and EU, prepared to amend their immigration law just because of the Commission report because of the international pressure, or even because of the United Nations? Is there any country ready to amend their immigration law? Thank you very much. Now, we will go to the next topic, which is quite important one. That's the external involvement to this Rakhine situation.
Indian Mujahideen and Fuji in Bangladesh and GMB, which made a serial bombing in Bangladesh in 2005. Many things like that. Also, we have our own brands, many brands since any brands, like Mujahideen Movement, Ranger Solidarity Organizations, Argan Ranger Defense Front, ARIF, ARNO, so many. And a little bit brief explanations about the development of those Ranger armed outfits. What happened in our countries in 1980s? More, I think, are systematic organizations of the RSO and ARI formed. They have got funding and support from other countries. I don't want to mention. But in short, in 2001, the Afghanistan war, the United States found that some of the Ranger Solidarity Organization's members joined with Taliban to attacking against United States troops. So that, at the time, also camps along the border with Bangladesh. The United States put pressure intensely to Bangladeshi government, and Bangladeshi government take action very harshly. They cannot live in those areas. They try to take the safe havens, another part of our border, eastern border with Thailand. So over there, assaulted organizations of the ethnic insurgents, they formed DAB, Democratic Alliance Force of Burma, Alliance of Burma. The Ranger organization approached to them, to accept them, to take refuge. But within that organization, there's some Rakhine groups strongly rejected to accept them. So they have nowhere to go. So they have no choice but to abandon the armed struggle, but to take political arms. That's why Arakan Rohingya Union, the RU, formed in Jeddah in support of OIC, and Eurobama office, Mr. Han Yong-wei, well-respected Shan politicians, in 2011. If I explain this, I have to take many hours, so that I will skip that. And then the ARU have a new Secretary General, happened to be an American doctor from Rohingya of Nepali descent, who attended Agricultural University of Myanmar in 1970s. I also been a first year student in University of Agriculture. At the time, he was, I think, 2 years junior to me. And then he went to the United States from Bangladesh, and then he got agricultural pathology, and is very good figure to start in organizations like that. To be frank, recently he went to Malaysia. After he went back, there's a huge mass protest against Myanmar government in front of Myanmar embassy. Who did it? I don't know. And then this photo taken by a Turkish news agency, Anchor News, in 2012. When Mr. Wakaruddin starting to organize the RU, at the same time, at the for the areas, those people are getting training with arms, and 3 people in front of this photo are Myanmar military engineer personnel, capture, ambush, raid. They are building the border fencing box. The capture by those people. Those people under training, you can see brand new small arms, M23 from a Chinese brand, light machine guns. Now drills. And I'm sorry to show these pictures that local officials making an address. You can see at the background one of the senior leader of the international terrorist group with Arab costumes. Actually, these are not a fake pictures. I read the authenticity of this picture, but they deleted that pictures after rampage in the social media. The recruits, these people, the military engineers, Myanmar military engineers personnel, were killed. They were slit. Yeah. There's video I don't want to show about the execution. Okay, in 2016, there's a news about the Pakistan links to Rohingya terrorists recruited like that from Myanmar local media, Mizima. And in recent days, what I've got from the same news source, and news that when Mr. Kofi Annan put his final report to the government, the mastermind from outside order the terrorist group in Myanmar to take action within 24 hours after Mr. Anand trips. What happened in August 25, we all know. 30 police stations along the border were attacked simultaneously in planned attack, like in October 9. So this is the international involvement and also the role of NGOs and NGOs in this issue. I recognize, I appreciate the efforts to help in humanitarian ground. When as the Chief Political Advisor to the President after 2012 incidents, I invited and I discussed with many NGOs, including ICRC. At the time, the relations between ICRC and the government is not so, I think, easy. But I tried. Because ICRC is very neutral international organizations in cooperation with Myanmar Red Cross Society. We could make, at the time, resident Rakhine people are strongly negative to NGOs. I suggested them, ICRC, you must cooperate with our local organizations, MRS, Myanmar Red Cross Societies, to operate in those affected areas. Not to show your face, just to provide from behind. That's my suggestions at the time. But the thing is that many NGOs and INGOs, especially INGOs, they have to rely on foreign donations. And donors consent is very important for them. They have very specific merits to whom they have to donate, to whom they have to appoint as a staff. That's why we found our senior staff, local staff, the medical doctor, happened to be arrested. The senior local staff of some one NGOs happened to be arrested because of the arranging the terrorist acts. And also, recently, in recent attacks, we found many AIDS items in the terrorist camp. I don't accuse those organizations directly support to the terrorists. But the thing is that the victim community have strong links with the terrorist organization because they are the same family. So it's undeniable that they may have some sort of the link to support those international items to the camps. But the thing is, at the other sides, local communities, a lack of support. So that, what will they feel? So what we request is that impartial assistance to both society, that's all. When I met with Assistant Secretary of State in Washington, D.C., Assistant Secretary of State on the Human Rights and Democracy and Immigration issues, I requested the Madam Secretary to give both communities fair and square, not to arouse the frustrations of the local community. That's very important. But the thing is that it won't happen. But I repeatedly requested, and I will request to take serious on that fact. And another one, media. Media, I'm also from media field. I'm also a TV commentator, radio talk show host, and also writer. So I know very well about media. International media would like, there's a saying goes in media field, no news is good news. They won't accept the good news as a news. So especially for the tarnished image of the Myanmar military and our past histories, they never try to bring out those traditional wisdom. Myanmar military, Myanmar majority are really bad. Oppress, gang rape, burn villages. If we do good things, I think it's time to stop. If you want to really solve these problems, you need balance and fair view. We need free media, but free and fair and responsible and balanced media, according to the media ethic. That's my point. Thank you.
The kind of crisis that most of the Bengali communities want to live peacefully and do a job of country work. But as a result of the involvement of some foreign intelligence services, some rich Arab Muslims, and the extremist organizations like IS, and with their support and command, some of the Bengali settlers have turned to militancy. So I think the violence happening around north of Rakhine has been the result of the militancy and the encouragement of the terrorist organizations such as IS. Dr. Derush has requested to say a few words on
you can choose your friends, you cannot choose your neighbors. This for a nation, this is an issue, and you don't choose the problems that you get. And you still have to look for solutions. I think that's the bottom of what I just said. And explaining this side of the matter, which is the national approach to these issues. I'm a little bit afraid that it might lead to the idea that don't listen to the foreigners. Don't take the advice of the foreigners. And you all know that Myanmar, at the time the Union of Burma, got this reputation of secluding itself from the rest of the world. And one needs to ask the question, is this for the good of the country? And I think many today think that no, Myanmar has to cope with a world that is global, where global communication works. It's a hard time, but they need to face up to this kind of challenges. I said that to my participants here that I didn't want to comment a lot on this issue of external involvement, but I think I catch up at this point, not only because I am a foreigner, but also because that all the even unrequested advice is not always necessarily bad. I also said, and I totally agree, that when it comes to immigration laws, you touch something very, I would say for people, very personal, that you don't want outsiders to mess up with the way you're formulating your immigration laws. Nonetheless, why do you make a law? You make a law because you're facing an issue. You want to have a law that is efficient. Now, the 1982 citizenship law, 35 years ago, the question is not just if it's a good law or a bad law, if something is good or need to be changed, but does it fulfill the purpose? And in many of the topics that we have been talking today, we've been talking about the past, or we have been talking about the present. And what we try, I think, all to do is we struggle to connect these things. You know what was very striking for me in 2012 is that as I'm a historian, I'm reading papers in the archives, and in a certain way it was like some people were talking in 2012 like 1962 had been yesterday. So it's like we starting the same thing, just again. But that's not possible because the world has been going on and there are new challenges and the incredible complexity and the problems we have to face these issues. And nowadays, I think it's that, our minds, our mentality, our approaches have some kind of problem to cope with all these huge challenges that many of the people who come here now to Yangon, to Libido, to this country, and we have been talking about those humanitarian rights organizations and so on and so forth, development agencies, are not prepared for all this complex reality. The country still needs to be explained and to be discovered. And the one point that I would really like to insist on, this is the country, defense services, the government, those authorities who speak up for the country, they need definitely make an effort on communication. Communicative strategy, you might call it, in other terms, to fulfill these needs, to cope with these enormous challenges. It's not enough to do something right, you also need to explain it to the rest of the world. Thank you.
The next topic is on ASEAN. So to save the time, because we have taken already 2 hours of the business time, I'll make a brief statement on ASEAN. Because Myanmar has been a good member of ASEAN for 20 years, and the principle of ASEAN is not interference and consensus. So when the violence happened in 2012, there was food for thought that all those violence acts done by the Bengali settlers have been the effort of the external powers to split the ASEAN into Muslim and non-Muslim groups. So I feel that their plot failed, and so I want to give all our audience some food for thought that there is some effort to split the ASEAN in 2 or 3 groups. Thank you very much. And then our last topic is how the current conflict can be solved. So the last topic.
So I'd like to touch a few minutes on the impact of ASEAN unity. As I've shown in my slides, ASEAN countries are actually trying to build unity in diversity. We have very diverse culture, political background, economic situations like that. But the TEC, Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, based on the peaceful coexistence policy, is well rooted in this region. And now we are building one community in every Cyprus. But still there is different interest in some issues, like South China Sea. But I don't think the Rakhine issue can be as much serious as the South China Sea, even though we have populous Muslim countries like Indonesia. Indonesia and Myanmar has a long history of cordial relationship. India, in its chairmanship of the ASEAN, strongly supported to give Myanmar a chair in 2014. Without Indonesians' help, we cannot get that opportunities. And also, we have very good relationship with other countries. But maybe this issue might be exploited for some domestic politics. But I don't think ASEAN unity can be hampered for these reasons. Of course, we have strong practice of consultations and consensus policy and decision-making bodies of the ASEAN. I hope, ASEAN can overcome these hurdles, these challenges. Not like European Union. So this is my opinion. And now we have to go to the next topic, the current problems and suggestions for solutions. So I've mentioned earlier, since 2011, with the highlight of religious extremism, international terrorist organizations found potential hotspots in Rakhine, and also elsewhere in Southeast Asian regions like southern Philippines and also in Indonesia or like that. Many archipelago nations, there are many small islands, very suitable for terrorist strongholds, for trainings and for recruiting, like that. And also many Muslim young people are recruited for the IS in Syria, like that. There's some sort of terrorist activities. This is the real challenge now, and it caused the current problems worsen. And also, as I mentioned earlier, the Bengali diaspora initiated a political move. So there's two-pronged tactics. One is armed revolts, and another one is political move in the international arena, and also media campaign, and many things like that. Now we are facing orchestrated and planned campaign. That's my assumptions. And unfortunately, in 2012, the serious communal riots taken in place in southern Rakhine town, Taunimong. So, by exploiting these incidents, both terrorist and political provocations has gained momentum. The then government tried very hard to tackle this problem, but it's too complicated to solve instantly. It needs a lot of considerations from all sides. And also domestic politics in the neighboring countries, and also domestic politics in Myanmar. At the time, reinforced worsening situation. At the time, you may remember that in 2012, the newly elected democratic governments has been taking place in our countries. But almost all of the international community have little trust on that government. They told us that this is an old one and new model. During that time, we are trying very hard to convince them we are really changing, but still sanctions are intact, international pressure are intact, international media are finding any faults of this new government. To show they are right, this new government is actually military government in the other form, other dress. So we are facing such sort of very hard challenges. And also in Bangladesh. You may know that Bangladesh is quite famous for, Bangladesh politics is quite famous as the two begums war. Begums means ladies. Two madam are leaders of the two major parties, Awami League and BNP. Awami League has taken very strong popular support. Awami League, Madam Hasina, Sheikh Hasina, actually to be frank, are pro-India. So that pro-Pakistan BNP tried to topple down the Sheikh Hasina government. The BNP has a strong relationship with extremist religious party and some sort of the militant groups, according to the news. So that there's a tendency to use Myanmar issues for their domestic political interests. Now there's news that JMD, as I mentioned earlier, very notorious terrorist outfit, is caught in making bomb, are jointly trained with AMM or ASA or any news, any heads they put along in the border area. This is not a new story. You can see the time of the Afghanistan war. We have found collaborative activities of both outfits. Okay, that's make worsen the situations. And also, from the side of international media, international organizations, I've mentioned earlier political correctness or moral superiority or white man burden or liberal values or anything like that. Still, I think that white man burdens to teach, to preach how the developing countries people. What's the liberal democracy, what's the humanitarian values? They're still going on. And they have responsibility to protect the victims. Even though victims are doing wrongs, I cannot accept that ideas plus conditions. Even though the victims are going wrong, they should point out and they should correct those victims. As I've mentioned earlier, there's no one-side victims. Both communities are victims. Even in every conflict areas, in a war, the victims are the grassroots innocent people from both sides. Whatever the religion, whatever race. That's the culprit, that's the real perpetrators who are inciting or provocating, organizing such sort of the terrorist activities and political, what we can call the covert operations. We need societies. We have got 1982 law. It may be, I think that whether better or good, I don't mention, but still it's a law. We have to abide by it as a citizen. And counter-terrorism measures, very important. Before we take measures on such sort of the administrative mechanism, we need to wipe out the threat of the terrorism in those regions. It's very important. And also, detoxifications of dangerous ideologies of extremism in those regions. That's very, very important. And a long-term comprehensive development of the region, the whole area, not only the affected area, but also the whole area of Rakhine State. Because Rakhine State is still second poorest entities in our union. And for our international counterparts, our colleagues, international media and NGOs, I would like to request again to be balanced, to be impartial, and equal towards both community. Otherwise, it will be counterproductive in solving the real problems. It may worsen the situations now. To be frank, in my mind, it's not satisfactory in this facts yet. That's just my point. Thank you for your patience.
I'd just like to say a few words on this topic. for solutions. When you read the international media on the Rakhine issue or on many other issues, it is like the government has to do this, the government has to do that. It's like it's all up to the government. Personally, looking back at history, I think you can do very much without involving all the people. You need to talk to the people. And I think that was just the conclusion that we have heard, that you need to involve those who want to live peacefully, whom you get together. Now, under President Deng's staying, and now recently, there have been reports that were made that gave a list of things. It is not just like a to-do list that you're going to work down. I think there should be discussion on each point, open discussion, passive discussion, controversial discussion. What can be done? Where can we do some progress? I think that's already work that is there. One should not just push it away because you don't like certain things. But it's something that is there, a basis for discussion and for conversation. But one thing is sure, I think that nothing can be done if you don't involve the people. You see, I have kind of, what happened to me is that in 2012, I got involved with this contemporary issue that I had never been involved with in my research previously. And now what I see is that since all these events that have been organized all over the world, workshops, conferences, panels, roundtables, mainly at none of these events, there were Rakhine people who were invited. I'm not even talking now about Myanmar participants. And I argued that when you're looking back at history, it's also coming down not just to the government or the security forces, it's also coming down to these people. And I get back to what I said earlier. Rakhine State is the Rakhine State, the state of these people who are living there and who want to live peacefully. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for all the kind attention that you did. So, for the first session, we will conclude all the discussions on both sides. We have a debate. After that, we will have the Q&A.
For the 15 minutes. MC.
စီစဉ်ရအဖေအဖေတည်ပြီးအခန့်ချင်းစီစဉ်ဖြစ်ပါတော့ကြောင်းခမရဲ့ညာရဲ့ချင်းနေရာမှာသုံးဆောင်လာကြောင်းဖိတ်ကြားပါတယ်ရှင်
Now we invite all of you to enjoy refreshment.
Ouais.
It's in terms of the level of coverage. Like you don't see the even if they're allowed on the field, they're always reporting on only one side of the story. You never see the other side of the story. That's the problem that's facing it. And it's being, in the age of social media, you have people that just retweet and tweet, and that little movement of the thumb, that's fucking powerful. I mean, it's up to the normal people, normal Westerners on your side to kind of help disseminate it.
Bon, ok. Bye. Alors on va pas rester ici, non?
Putain, la vieille personne qui est arrivée, elle a dit tout ce qui se passe c'est à cause des Western Media.
Ah, je pensais qu'il nous appelait.
Very much, Dr. Bayer. Yeah. First commission, Rakhine Commission, and we assembled in 2012 and we produced a report which was released at the Myanmar Peace Center in 2013. Now, in that report was an action plan, including for citizenship, and it was widely accepted community and by the Bengali community. So, what is strange is that the current Dr. Kofi Annan's commission, I was the only one left out who was not to be interviewed. Maybe because they didn't want to hear the truth. So let me just first make a comment, because I understood from the moderators that we can also make a comment. Because all the issues that were presented, of course, I don't know as deeply as the historians, but I'm familiar with them. My comment is that the issue of the name, which we discussed this morning, is actually a non-issue in the area of citizenship, because we have to take the existing citizenship law according to the name which is legal in the Union of Myanmar. So the Bengali in Rakhine can call themselves Rohingya or whatever they wish, but this will not be officially recognized. So what implications does that have beyond the name, beyond the emotional rhetoric of the name? The implication is that, ladies and gentlemen, we started in Nebo, and I think Bukinyi is here, a pilot project on citizenship process, which we had put in the action plan. And at that time, like